Come along on one of my bucket list journeys. For the longest time, I had wanted to see the national parks of Utah, but I didn't know there were 5 of them until we really started to research the trip. I just thought there were the 3 main ones. Well, the 2 that I didn't even know about, well, maybe not the 2. I think Canyonlands, never heard of it, was probably the highlight. We have to think about that, but it might have been. So we started our trip in Vegas and had some car trouble. And as you saw on the odometer, it was 107 degrees. It was hot. And the freezer that we had in the Dutch Star, the outside freezer that we thought was going to keep all the extra meat we bought safe, well, that freezer, turns out after 90 some degrees, it shuts off. We had to throw everything away. But the Vegas trip was fun, and then Dixieland National Forest occupies almost 2 million acres and stretches for about 170 miles across southern Utah. It's the largest national forest in Utah, and the elevations range from 2,800 feet above sea level to nearly 11,322 feet above sea level. This reserve was established in 1905 by the General Land Office. The name was derived from the local description of the warm southern part of Utah as Dixie. Well, just like Canyonlands and Capitol Reef, 2 of the parks we didn't know about, we also did not know about Dixieland National Forest or Red Canyon. Red Canyon is located along Scenic Byway 12, 9 miles south outside of Bryce. So if you enter Bryce Canyon from the west, you pass right through it. As a matter of fact, we thought this was one of the national parks. Well, it's not. There's also no fee, and you can ride bikes and ATVs along many of the trails. Zion National Park is the 3rd most visited national park in the United States. Human habitation of the area started about 8,000 years ago with small family groups of Native Americans. Mormons came into the area in 1858 and settled in the early 1860s. The geology of Zion and Kolob canyons includes 9 formations that together represent 150 million years of mostly Mesozoic aged sedimentation. At various periods in that time, warm, shallow seas, streams, ponds, and lakes, vast deserts, and dry near-shore environments covered the area, starting about 13 million years ago. Uplift associated with the creation of the Colorado Plateau lifted the region 10,000 feet. The weather is unpredictable. In the spring, it can be stormy and wet. It can be warm and sunny. Precipitation is usually the heaviest in March, and afternoon thunderstorms are common from July through mid-September. The storms may produce waterfalls as well as flash floods, so be careful in the canyons. Autumn tree color displays begin in September in the high country. In Zion Canyon, autumn colors usually peak in late October. Winter is supposedly fairly mild. We were there in September, and we spent about 3 days to 5 days in each park. If you go online, there are plenty of places that will tell you, do the 5 parks in 5 days. Yes, if you just want to drive through and see them, that's about it. But if you really want to have fun at the parks, give them a couple days each. They're so different and amazing and fun and beautiful. All or most of the parks have shuttles that you can ride around. And in Zion, only in Zion, we did take the shuttle because it was crowded. There were lots of people there. So we rode on the shuttle, and that's where we saw in the distance that little rock slide. Luckily, it was in the distance. And then we saw so much more when we just got in our vehicle and drove around. We did lots of small hikes. Nothing strenuous, nothing scary, no bears or anything like that, but just walked around and saw the amazing beauty. And that's why I wanted to look into the geology of the area, because I find rocks and rock formations fascinating, and I know nothing. but I knew that something special had happened here in Zion and in the other parks to create the awesome beauty, the rugged, multicolored formations of rock, and then how nature brought green, vibrant plants into this deserty area. It was just beautiful. You have to go. Get out your bucket list right now and write down the parks. Show me had a great time too. Most canyons are formed by a process of long-time erosion from a plateau or table land level. The cliffs form because the harder rock strata is resistant to erosion and weathering and remains exposed. But Bryce Canyon is not a canyon. It was not formed from erosion initiated from a central stream. Instead, headward erosion, sheets of water on a roughly flat surface, first enter a depression in that surface. Then it erodes the top edge of the depression and excavated large amphitheater-shaped features in the Cenozoic aged rock of the plateau. This erosion resulted in delicate and colorful pinnacles called hoodoos that are up to 200 feet high. Bryce Canyon was my favorite. It was just breathtaking. I couldn't have put all my photos in because I had so many. This video would have gone on for years. But here are my favorites. The erosion of the sedimentary rocks created natural arches, natural bridges, walls, and windows. Hoodoos are composed of soft sedimentary rock and are topped by a piece of harder, less easily eroded stone that protects the column from the elements. Therefore, the column remains. Bryce Canyon has one of the highest concentrations of hoodoos of any place on Earth. The brown, pink, and red colors are from hematite. The yellows are from limonite. And the purples are from pyrosulite, or something like that. Most park visitors sightsee using the scenic drive, and that's what we did, which provides access to 13 viewpoints over the amphitheaters. Bryce Canyon has 8 marked and maintained hiking trails that can be hiked in less than a day. We didn't do much hiking here. We did a lot of driving and looking and photographing. Little is known about early human habitation in the canyon, but native people were there for at least 10,000 years. Small groups of Mormon pioneers attempted to settle along the Paria River, and in 1873, a cattle company started to use the area for cattle grazing. The Mormon Church sent Scottish immigrant Ebenezer Bryce, catch the last name, and his wife Mary to settle in that valley because they thought since he was a carpenter, he'd be able to be very useful in the area. They chose to live right below the Bryce Amphitheater, where the main collection of hoodoos in the park are. He grazed his cattle, and he said that the amphitheaters were a hell of a place to lose a cow. The air in this area is so clear that on most days, from some of the viewpoints, you can see other states. You can see parts of Arizona and New Mexico. The park also has and I don't know what this means, but it's a 7.4 magnitude night sky, making it one of the darkest places in North America. Stargazers can see 7,500 stars with the naked eye, while in most places you can only see less than 2,000. And of course in large cities, pretty much nothing. And because they are so incredible and rare, back to the hoodoos, they have formed over millions of years. Sometimes they're called fairy chimneys, tent rocks, or earth pyramids, depending on where in the world you find them. But they are not created by man. They are created 100% by nature. They're one of the most jaw-dropping natural formations that exist in the world. And there are very few structures that even look like a hoodoo. There are pinnacles, but they're not the same. And another thing that sets them apart is their unique color. In every area where hoodoos are found, they appear in many different colors. It's due to the variations of minerals that lie within the rock that forms the hoodoos. In one location, they could be dark gray or black, while in another pink, while in another yellow, while in another red. And we talked about some of the rock or chemical, what are they that make the color, like lemonite and hematite, etc. The Mormon settlers in this area had a difficult time getting water, and that is what this tropical ditch is about. They got together and they dug a trench to bring water into their area. Many-mile long trench. We took a day and decided we would go off-roading, and we put the vehicle at the time, the Jeep, into four-wheel drive, and we went back to Kodachrome Basin, which is a state park. We took a couple of small hikes. It was hot. I mean, we're talking 90s to 100 degrees, but beautiful. The rock formations are the same and different from everywhere else that we went in Utah. It is just amazing, the variety of formation, the variety of color. You've got to go. Again, bucket list time. Get it out. Write it down. It's important. We spend a lot of time driving up and down and all around, and sometimes we'd be in one park and then we would end up kind of going to another park area. And so I may not always be 100% right on with where some of my photos are. Now, please forget the pornographic photos. Nature created them. I just was kind of like, woo, what the heck? And had to, include them in my photo gallery. This was an odd spire of some sort because look, it's all white and it comes out of the red. That's why I had to take his picture, and you could see what that was. We were probably in the vicinity of Zion on some of this because we did go and we did a lot of little hikes. Onyx stayed home to guard the house like any good Sphinx cat would, and nothing bad happened to the Dutch Star while we were gone. We also saw the Merrimack Butte, which is a 5,627 foot sandstone summit located in Grand County, Utah. It's about 12 miles northwest of Moab. Monitor and Merrimack Buttes were named after the two ironclad ships from the Civil War, the Monitor and the Merrimack. They can be seen from Highway 313 after it climbs out of 7 Mile Canyon. And we did see them and we did film them. Well, not film, just shoot photos of them. And we did, as you can see, look, there are all kinds of little paths through the park. When you go, get off. Those little highways, you don't need four-wheel drive. You know what? When we were on the big four-wheel drive, and I was all excited as we were going back to Kodachrome Canyon, there were some small loser Toyota cars without any kind of four-wheel drive on the same dirt, gravel, sandy road that we were on. And they seemed to do just as well as we did. Kind of took the steam out of my four-wheeling. In Zion, as well as the rock formations and the fun little hiking areas. And as you might have noticed, I love the dead trees. I think their formations, what nature did to them, is amazing. You see, look at the stripes in that. Stripes, the strata. Let me act a little more intelligent. We went to the petroglyphs Narrows and walked around and looked at the petroglyphs, and one of the out of the park kind of highlights was there was a couple there with their cat on a leash, and they were just like as if he was a dog on a leash, walking around looking at the petroglyphs like we were doing. One thing that was all very upsetting here was that there were some areas not too far where people of today felt the need to write on the rocks themselves. I hate... Okay, this is old graffiti. Maybe someday, in thousands of years, people will look at it and call it art. But right now, it's present day is graffiti. The Elijah Cutler Behunin cabin was built to house Elijah and his family of 12. They lived here from 1883 to 84, not very long, because they left the town of Fruta, which we went through too. It's a flat area that really was pretty good for farming back in Zion, after a flood threatened the house and its fields. The one-story sandstone structure measures 13 feet by 16 and a half feet. It's one single room, and like I said, there were, I can't remember if it's 12 people or 12 children in the family. Just crazy. Capitol Reef National Park is in Utah's south central desert. It's surrounded by a long wrinkle in the earth known as the Water Pocket Fold, with layers of golden sandstone, canyons, and striking rock formations. We did go down there to take a hike, but I kind of fell and just tripped on a rock. There's no good excuse for it. It was like, and luckily it was just on a nice flat part, and I hit a rock and I went down. And so then we went back to the car and went back to the RV. I was fine, but I couldn't do the hike. Among the park's sites are Chimney Rock, the Hickman Bridge Arch, and the domes of white rock that look like Capitol buildings in states. We did do the Hickman Bridge. That was what we were walking on here alongside a little stream. Again, everything is so different and so interesting. I had to take pictures of flowers because they are there. Look at the structure. Look at the holes. Everywhere you looked was something different and exciting. And even if it was similar to something you just saw, there was enough different so you weren't bored. And out in the middle of nowhere here, a schoolhouse. There wasn't a whole lot of info about the schoolhouse, the specific schoolhouse, but look how well made it was. And it was right at the bottom of the big rock fall. If you see all the rocks lying on the ground, it's kind of a miracle that the schoolhouse didn't get damaged over the 100+ years it was there. And it doesn't have to be daylight to be beautiful in the national parks of Utah. Well, we had to do the scenic byway when we heard about it. And one of the first things we saw was the Anasazi Museum, which really was very impressive. It's an excavation of an original Anasazi village with some homes, and you can see this is the home. They lived down there. They lived down in there and climbed down. I think they lived there for the coolness. Also, one of the most fascinating things is open range. Be careful when you drive in that major highway, and it's a highway, but it's an open range. The cattle are on the road if they want to be on the road because it's an open range. This was where we saw the majority of the fall leaves, and we were a little early. We were there in September. You can see they're turning. There's a lot of yellow. Some of them have already gone into the red-orange. And fall being my favorite season of the year, me living in Southern California for 30-some years, where fall is pretty close to summer. Some of the trees do lose their leaves, but a lot of trees in California are evergreen. You know, palm trees are evergreen. So I get excited every time I see a fall leaf. And I can feel the crispness in the air. And you know what? Even in California, there were some days with crisp fall air. And once again, the sky. Poor Shomi had to stay back. Canyonland is the largest national park in Utah, and its diversity staggers the imagination. The easiest way to see the park is with a visit to the Island in the Sky district, only 32 miles from Moab. The Island in the Sky offers many pullouts and spectacular views along the paved scenic drive. Hiking trails and four-wheel drive roads access backcountry areas for day or overnight trips. The Island in the Sky sits atop a massive 1,500-foot mesa. It is an island in the sky. 20 miles of paved roads lead to many of the most spectacular views in canyon country. From these viewpoints, visitors can often see over 100 miles in any given direction, resulting in panoramic views that encompass thousands of square miles of canyon country. It is known for its dramatic desert landscape carved by the Colorado River. Other notable areas are the towering rock pinnacles known as the Needles, the remote canyons of the Maze, and the Native American rock paintings in Horseshoe Canyon. Whitewater rapids flow through the Cataract Canyon. Millions of years of geographic activity created the spectacular views from Dead Horse Point State Park. Deposits of sediment by ancient oceans, freshwater lakes, streams, and wind-blown sand dunes created the rock layers of canyon country. Igneous activity formed the high mountains and that rise like cool blue islands out of the hot desert. The movie Thelma and Louise, the final scene when Thelma and Louise drive off what everybody thought was the Grand Canyon, was really Dead Horse Point. We learned that when we were there. Wow. First of all, we didn't even know Canyonlands existed. This was one of the 2 parks that we didn't know about. Capitol Reef and this one. And this one was unbelievable. When we were there looking, some guy said, "Oh, this is way better than the Grand Canyon." I don't know that it's way better. It's the same and it's different. It seems a little more personal and just amazing. Dead Horse Point supposedly is called this because horses were rounded up. They were not forced to go off the cliffs. They were corralled up at the top of the cliff, up at the top of the mesa, and many of them died from exposure. That's what supposedly gave it its name. Mark and Sue, this is for you. Beginning October 1st in 2019, visitors to the parks were allowed to ride e-bikes on any of the trails that regular bikes could ride on. That's kind of cool. I definitely want to come back here. It's on my re-bucket list, and I hope to have an e-bike by that time, and I will get many more up-close pictures, and I will even have live, well, not live, a video that's happening that I'm filming as I'm talking. Not just, oh, look at this. Sorry, that was a squirrel moment. I'm not even going to put a squirrel in. It's just amazing. That's the Green River, by the way. Not the Colorado. I thought it was, because, you know, why not? If you see a river, you just kind of assume it's a Colorado River, but no. So this is very close to Moab, which was a nice little fun town. People go there for skiing and dirt bike riding and off-roading. We just played tourist, and we did not do any of the many hikes they have with this. There are supposedly hikes you can take down into the canyon, and you can even see some of the little pathways from the photos. You can tell. You can see hundreds of miles, I think, away, and it wasn't even that clear. I think we might have gone back twice. One day it was rainy. The next day that we went back, the rains had stopped, and it was now a beautiful crystal clear sky. Oh, speak of the devil, and the rainwater. It's just amazing that nature did that. You know what? Nature did not need any heavy equipment and big cats. Nature just was patient. Took a few million years, but look how beautiful the creations are. Arches National Park has over 2,000 natural stone arches and hundreds of soaring pinnacles, massive rock fins, and giant balanced rocks. The Red Rock Wonderland amazes everyone with its formations. The trails are fantastic and get you closer to nature. And just like in the other parks, it's got some sunrises and sunsets that only God could paint. about 65 million years ago, this area was a dry seabed spreading from horizon to horizon. If you stood in the Devil's Garden area then, the striking red rock features that you see today would have been buried thousands of feet underneath you. Raw materials, not yet carved. But then the landscape slowly began to change. And just a break, we had some snack in Moab. It was quite a tasty little restaurant brewery, one of my beginning brewery experiences. Back to geology. First, geologic forces wrinkled and folded the buried sandstone. Now remember, this is rock. This is the earth and how powerful it is. So it wrinkled and folded the sandstone underneath as if it was a rug, and someone gathered two edges toward each other, making lumps across the middle. As the sandstone warped, fractures tore through it, establishing the pattern of rock sculptures for the future. Next, the entire region began to rise. It just lifted up, climbing from sea level to thousands of feet in elevation. And those forces of erosion carved layer after layer of the rock away. Once exposed, deeply buried sandstone layers expanded, kind of like after you squeeze out a sponge and the water's gone and you take it out of your hand and it gets bigger again. Well, this created even more fractures. Each one was a pathway for water to seep into the rock and further break it down. Today, water shapes the environment more than any other force, more than wind. It's water. Rain erodes the rock and carries sediment down washes and canyons to the Colorado River. Desert varnish appears where water cascades off cliffs. In winter, snowmelt pools in fractures and other cavities and then freezes and expands, breaking off chunks of sandstone. Small recesses develop and grow bigger with each storm. Little by little, this process turns fractured rock layers into fins and fins into arches. Arches also emerge when potholes near cliff edges grow deeper and deeper until they wear through the cliff wall below. In addition to grand arches, water dissolves small honeycomb formations called tuffoni. Over time, the same forces that created the arches will continue to widen them until they collapse. Standing next to a monolith like Delicate Arch, it's easy to forget that the arches are impermanent. Most of the arches will last beyond our lifetime, but they will eventually wear away. We had one really great desert storm while we were here, and luckily it happened when we were at home in the Dutch Star, safe and warm and dry. Again, thank you for joining me on my journey and experiencing one of my bucket lists. And I hope now, if you haven't been, you're putting it on your bucket list because it is worth it. Go, enjoy, and remember.